The free-living organism and its environment taken together form an absolute system. The two parts act and react on one another. This is what Ashby says. And she goes on to say, the notion is not new, not with Ashby or even Wiener, for Ashby quotes scientists as early as 1906 who make the same observations, but Ashby refines it, introducing other concepts such as stability, a mode of survival in the organism, is to work toward the creation of a synthetic self-organizing techno-species. Although many approaches this goal in a positive light, survival of the fittest in the Darwinian sense becomes one key to the fear of intelligent machines. Will intelligent machines take over, replace, and control people? And I'm showing just a dystopic kind of slideshow in the background of popular culture. Will intelligent machines take over, replace, and or control people? To some extent, this can already be witnessed in terms of the field of robotics, where machines have replaced many factory workers. And AI systems have replaced particular kinds of analysts, like, for example, should I get a loan? And the machine decides yes or no. This second methodology seeks to posit a new paradigm for computing through the generation of an electrochemical computer, a multimodal sensing system and related robotic environment. We call this the thought body environment, one word, thought body. Both approaches are deeply informed by biomimetics and bioabstraction. Much earlier, von Neumann stated, a new, essentially logical theory is called for in order to understand high complication automata and, in particular, the central nervous system. It may be, however, that this process logic will have to undergo a pseudomorphosis to neurology to a much greater extent than the reverse. Inversely, to what degree might the ability to transmit knowledge directly generate a form of machinic schizophrenia? One might also ask, to what degree might such a unified approach to consciousness have negative ramifications related to control, generating an intellectual panopticism? Another precursor to consider is the golem myth, where a particular animated being is created from inanimate matter. The most famous golem legend centered here in Prague in the 16th century. After molding the golem and endowing it with life, Rabbi Lowe was forced to destroy the creature after it ran amok. As artificial life merges with its real counterpart, bioengineering, the definition of life itself, as artificial life merges with its real counterpart, bioengineering, the definition of life itself, becomes challenged as machines are figuratively brought to life. Alternately, the positive ethics surrounding the creations of a benevolence engine and the discussion that it promotes helps to balance such dystopian perspectives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any question from the room?
You just picked up on something that I'm really interested in. An artist we're working with who's going to the AI lab in Zurich is a specialist in karakuri, which is Japanese mechanical doll making. And her thesis is that culturally, because of that tradition, there's a lot less of this, what you call the attraction-repulsion model. And yet you seem to be suggesting that it's a universal human response. And I guess I just wanted to, how have you brought that kind of cultural difference?
Right, well, I mean, I think it's something that will be playing itself out. I give the example of the uncanny valley as what some people have said about it. And obviously the Japanese culture had very much accepted it. It might have to do with animistic cultures that believe that all things are living already. But it's not a question I can answer. I think it's something that's going to play out as a dialectic. So.
Biotechnologies produce, modify, and sustain life in forms no longer comprehensible within the traditional Western frameworks. Nonetheless, the distinction made by the Greeks between the two terms for life, bios and zoe, still proves to be very useful. Zoe, as Rabinov points out, I quote, referred to the simple fact of being alive and applied to all living beings per se, while bios indicated the appropriate form given to a way of life of an individual or group, while zoe, as its animal other, remained marginalized in the phallocentric tradition of the West. Currently, it is the biopower of Zoe that attracts so much attention. On the one hand, it is an object of desire of anthropocentrically oriented transhumanists and neoliberal humanists who tend to instrumentalize and commercialize it. On the other hand, post-anthropocentric thinkers focusing on pre-human and non-human aspects of Zoe point out the necessity of considering subject as ecological entity, and here I mainly refer to Rosy Braidotti. Yet, by this I mean that the question of good life, bios, has become intrinsically a matter of the vital processes of our animal life, that is, Zoe, end of quote. This new Zoe-philia evokes questions of belonging and identity, responsibility and sustainability, which also include territorially expanding extreme environments of biotech labs, where in vitro life dwells in a highly controlled new setup of man-made environmental networks. The developments in the life sciences constantly challenge the notion of life and call for a consideration of the status of in vitro life. I believe that only by recognizing in a very positive way the impersonal and inhuman vitality of Zoe, shared by all life, we have a chance to fully include in vitro life in our world of symbiotic dependencies and responsibilities. I believe that it is absolutely crucial not to isolate in vitro life as an object positioned outside of the ecology of other forms of life, where we, as human forms, belong. The artists established, as they call it, the feeding ritual and the killing ritual performed in the exhibition spaces, which become a constant reminder that any life is embodied and embedded as a process of exchange with its environment. However, as Braidotti argues, I quote, the practices of life and death have been dislocated and redefined in fundamental ways by contemporary culture and technology. The killing is done by taking the semi-living sculptures out of their containment. The fungi and the bacteria which exist in the air and on our hands are much more potent than the cells. As a result, the cells get contaminated and die, some instantly and some over time, end of quote. Zoe as a total vitality may also hurt as it continues regardless of death happening on its way. And because of these deaths, this dynamics includes us who not only fear for life, but also of life. For that, it would be impossible to reclaim our Zoe-philia position without fulfilling the minimum requirement that is abandoning or actually outliving anthropocentrism. Thank you.